Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My next guest on the Muslim Nonprofit Show. Now, I could give you an introduction, but I'm just going to say one thing. An American Muslim who met Dr. Martin Luther King. I'm going to stop there and let you hear the rest. Right now, Imam Khalid Griggs. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My teacher, Imam Khalid, thank you for being on the show today.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Imam Khalid, there's been so many places where, mashallah, you've led, you've supported impact. Today, now more than ever, there's so many youth out there on college campuses, jobs, sitting behind a desk, and they're thinking and wondering, what can I do to help? What's the pathway to be an activist? And I thought maybe someone who's dedicated their entire life to serving humanity and being an activist, if you could just tell us, what was that moment in young Khalid Griggs' mind, that moment in your life where you made that jump? What was happening at that time? What inspired you? What took you there?
Yeah, that's a very, very good, thought-provoking question. And I would have to say that my father's background as a trade unionist, he was a union organizer in the Deep South. And of course, I'm from North Carolina. And he would come home telling stories, union stories. As a kid, I was learning union songs. And so I grew up with a spirit of fighting for the little guys. And also at that particular time when I was growing up, the trade labor movement was running parallel and intersected with the civil rights movement.
Okay.
And my father interacted a lot with Dr. King and many of the leaders around him, because at trade labor rallies, oftentimes Dr. King and others would come in and help try to inspire the crowds for unions. And so from a very early age, I realized that the capacity of organized work, that we can't change anything as individuals, and that the only way that we can make changes is to come together in an organized fashion. So when I grew up a little older and went away to college, I jumped right into every activist activity that was going on campus. And I just thank Allah that Howard University didn't have mandatory classes. I never would have graduated from there because I spent more time in protest, or an equal amount of time protesting something and being a part of activist groups, than I did sitting in the classroom. So my journey in activism started literally as a child. I can remember as early, and I'm not going to just keep going on with this, but as early as 1965, my father was heading he was the chief organizer of a strike in Selma, Alabama that lasted for 5 years. And he brought me down one Christmas holiday because he couldn't come home. So he just flew me down to Selma. And so I got and this was right after the Pettus Bridge episode. And so, I just grew up in that environment and just trying to continue that after becoming Muslim my senior year.
SubhanAllah, and I have to ask this question. I know it's a question in my audience's mind. Did you also meet Dr. Martin Luther King?
As a kid.
Yes.
Yeah, as a very young person.
That counts. That counts. Yes.
SubhanAllah.
Yes. And so, okay. So, and you also mentioned you became Muslim in college. So your father is involved in activism and mobilizing for rights. But was he Muslim also, or was he not Muslim?
He never became Muslim. No, he never became Muslim.
And so,
his family they had a long history of ministers. And my father was one of the few in his extended family who never considered becoming a preacher. He never considered that. And he was very surprised when I became Muslim. And he was more surprised when he saw a little sincerity, but he was satisfied that he had helped chart me a course and set me on a
MashaAllah.
path that I would follow in my own unique way.
MashaAllah. May Allah give him Jannah. So now you out of college, you have and I heard you say thank God for required classes, otherwise you wouldn't have gone to the classes. Now
Right.
I'm gonna use that when my kids complain about required classes and volunteer classes.
Right.
What happens next when you come out of college? What happens next? Because today, I don't know if our audience knows this or not, but you are the executive director for the ICNA Council on Social Justice, and you are also a community leader and imam there in Winston-Salem, as well. And you're involved, and then also part of Mabel in Texas, and so many other things. So, come out of college, what happens next?
Yeah, actually, my senior year, the first month of my senior year in college, I embraced Islam. And I was fortunate to embrace Islam at the headquarters of the Islamic Party in North America. It had been organized about 6 months before I joined the organization. And the Islamic Party was a collection of a lot of activist brothers and sisters. Many had come out of the Black Panther Party, brothers and sisters, different organizations that were committed to social change. And so it was and most of us, the core people, were actually college students and or had recently graduated from college. And so we were challenged to use whatever intellectual capacity that we had to put that at the service of people. And specifically for us in the Islamic Party was spreading the message of Islam while at the same time trying to address the overall conditions of the society. Those people who, like being an African American and coming from that African American tradition of struggle, there were a number of Muslim political prisoners and activists and even non-Muslim political prisoners at this time. And so I immediately got involved in this kind of work. I'll tell you a real quick funny story. When I first became Muslim, and I had this background of just doing things in the community, I told the imam, because I was felt like I was so renewed by the theology and just making salah and this kind of thing, that I told the Amir of the Islamic Party at that time that, I think I'm going to just really set aside all this other stuff that I was doing, and I'm just going to focus on the spiritual dimension. And he said, wait a minute, you come to the wrong place. He wanted me to take that background that I had and try to develop a division of this organization around that kind of activism. So I went from the cocoon of my father and my mother and that family, and then I went into Islamic Party. So it was this, I guess, instilled in me at an early age that you can't just be satisfied with your own comfort. As long as you see that other people are suffering, for no matter what the reason may be, you have to do something to try to change it. And another thing that I was so inspired by my father. To me, he was one of the most courageous individuals that I've been around. And he was organizing, as I said, Mississippi and Alabama and all these places. And he would come home sometimes with bullet holes in his windows or in the car doors. And I would ask him, I said, Dad, what's going on? I mean, why are you getting shot at?
Yeah.
And he said, well, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm Union or it's because I'm Black. And so, but he was a very courageous person. And for any young person today who's seeing the events that are unfolding under this particular administration and just the total disregard for constitutional law and restrictions that are placed on law enforcement and others, you have to not be afraid. We can't be afraid because Al-Qaeda is already written. And
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that we just go out and needlessly, unnecessarily put ourselves in harm's way. But we have this divinely mandated responsibility to stand out firmly for justice. We can't get around that. And so everything that's going on, as I see it today, is just to scare us, to make us not want to take a stand because of the perceived risk and the actual things that we see that are happening around us, the college students, their friends, and those taking positions, and even the universities themselves. So, but we have to be courageous. And if we can't find within ourselves that capacity to put ourselves not in harm's way deliberately, but to be willing to sacrifice our own comfort and safety to try to help bring about the good for others, then we're in the wrong line of work. It's almost like stay in the mosque.
Yeah.
Don't even
Yeah.
come out there if we was too afraid.
And what in all these years that you've sort of lived this life of activism, what's the worst thing that's happened to you as you live this life? Yeah.
That's a really good question. That's a very, very good question. And
the reason why I say that is because, you touched upon, Imam Khalid, what's going on right now. And there's so many people, I hear it every day. Just keep your head down and do your job. This will pass.
Right.
I feel bad about what's going on to whomever, but you know what? It's not my problem. I need to just keep my head down and do what I'm doing. And so, and that comes from the fact that they're just scared. They're scared to speak up, to stand up. And that's why I ask you that question. You were, as you said, 8 or 9 years old, and your father, mashallah, this courageous man, pulling into the driveway with bullet holes in his car. And yet you still chose, you saw that the consequences of standing up might lead to even being shot at. Yet you still, mashallah, Imam Khalid, lived your entire life as an activist. So I ask you, what's the worst thing that happened to you? And perhaps, and you're still here with me. So,
right,
yeah,
right.
Like, what's the worst that can happen?
I tell you some of the, oh boy, that's so many different things. I'll give you a couple.
Yeah.
The first thing that I can really acknowledge as being kind of frightening to me was when I was a college student and going to school in D.C. during the Vietnam War years.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of protests down at the monument grounds and other places with U.S. involvement in what we were doing in Vietnam. And the president at this particular time was Richard Nixon.
Okay.
And Nixon is the closest person that I can compare to the president we have today. This guy was a very mean-spirited human being. And he would unleash, when we would be at the monument, he would unleash these big DC cops. They had a special squad. Of course, we call them the Goon Squad. Big dudes, over 6 feet tall, and they have these big shields like in Nazi Germany or somewhere. And they would come in and start beating, the protesters. And at that time, I took an American flag and I burned it on all 4 corners. And I sewed it on my behind and had it upside down, but I burnt the corners on all 4 corners, sewed it on the back of my pants. And so it was like the ultimate disrespect for the flag.
Oh, man.
So when the Goon Squad, once they saw me 1 or 2 times, they were after a lot of people, but I was one of their targets. They wanted to beat me senseless.
Oh, no.
And so it was almost funny when they would pull up at the top of the hill and, the guys around me, Griggs, start running, go now, because they were coming down the hill at us. They were never able to get me. They were never able to get me, but literally, I felt the way they were just coming after me. I knew that if they caught me, they were going to try to beat me to death. That would be the last time I had on those jeans with that flag on my behind. So that was an early experience. That was kind of, but I knew it was going to happen. I knew that if they spotted me in a crowd, that this would happen. But I continued to go. I kept going, knowing the possibility, because I felt strongly that this was an immoral war. I felt strongly that Richard Nixon was a threat to America and American democracy. So I had to get out there. But then in later activist activities in my life, I have been involved in a number of demonstrations where things have not gone well, and police, for whatever reason, whatever the justification that they could come up with, would attack. And I'll say that I've in recent years have participated with Dr. William Barber's Poor People's Campaign, and he has had me speak at a number of the different events over the years. And when they were doing the Moral Mondays in North Carolina, I would be on the platform and speak and say whatever came to mind. And then afterwards, there would be a group that would go, and mostly the people who were speakers would go to the State House, because we were doing it on the State House grounds, and civil disobedience, and sit down in the offices and get arrested. So I told Dr. Barber and others that I'll say all kinds of things on the platform, I'll march, I'll do all of this, but I'm not going to go and deliberately get arrested. As you all are Christians, many Christian preachers, I am a Muslim, and I'm not trying to voluntarily subject myself, because I didn't know whether I would get out. I know eventually I would get out. But then later you see cases like, well, not later, but you see cases like Imam Jamil Abdullah Al-Amin, and cases like that. And so if I'm going to get arrested, it's not because I'm voluntarily trying to submit myself. Give another real quick funny thing. It was funny. It wasn't funny when it was happening. I was able to attend a Zionism. I was invited to attend a Zionism racism conference in Tripoli, Libya, in 1976.
Wow.
And when I came back into the country, I had an office in headquarters mosque, and the FBI agent was like sitting there waiting for me to return. And I said, oh boy, here we go. I'm start thinking about, oh man, I got these two little baby girls, and, I'm getting ready to go to prison. But again, I knew what the possible and potential outcomes could have been. And for me, it's never been a matter of just being reckless, but it's just trying to be true to the convictions. And nothing can be changed and accomplished if we're not willing not to just be reckless, but we have to sacrifice our own comfort and safety for those ideals that we believe in and what we want to see happen in the society.
MashaAllah. No, thank you for sharing that, because I'll tell you, your what you've described is powerful, because you're essentially saying Muslims are not supposed to go be reckless and careless with their advocacy and their stand for truth. Although you acknowledge and you recognize the risks, you embrace the risks, and that's where the faith part comes in, because Allah says those who believe, stand and be witness, and it takes belief and conviction to do that. So if I'm thinking about taking a stand in an advocacy organization, maybe completing an action alert. Some people don't do action alerts today because they're like, I don't want my name in that database. FBI or whoever's going to know I completed an action alert. I'm not going to do the sign up for this event. I'm not going to go to this event because, there's doxing and all those things. What I'm hearing you say, Imam Khalid, is you, in order for you to stand for justice and live a life of activism, you have to embrace those possibilities, and you take your steps within your legal rights. Don't go beyond the legal rights, because now you're breaking the law, and Muslims should never break the law. I think that's powerful advice to share for everybody out there. What do you say, as my last question before we wrap, as you think about organizing? You said this early on today. You said, find the people who are working on that cause, whether it's criminal justice reform, whether it's, education reform, whether it's housing reform, healthcare reform, whatever those social justice issues are, find the people working on it, join them, and take a stand. What advice and tips do you have for them? And how does that feel today to you as you lay your head down every night that you lived a life of activism? What hope can you give everybody else out there?
Yeah. The thing is that once we truly commit to not just justice as just a word, but once we are truly convicted to try to bring, taking a stand for what we perceive and what we know as it's defined in Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, once we are convicted to that, then we have to take a stand. We have to do something. We can't, otherwise, what the guys on the street say, you're selling wolf tickets. You're just talking and you're not demonstrating through your behavior and your actions. It's very important that we know our limitations and that we don't do things to unnecessarily jeopardize our safety, our health, our well-being, and even our freedom. But there comes a time when we look at the Sahaba even, and one event comes to mind, before, and you know better than I, but just to remind all of us that before Umar ibn al-Khattab and Hamza embraced Islam, that when Muslims would gather around the Kaaba, including the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Abu Bakr, and they would be there too long, they'd get beat up. Somebody's going to come and beat them up. And so the Muslims couldn't gather around the Kaaba as a group. They would just come in and try to get out before somebody beat them up. But when Omar embraced Islam and Hamza embraced Islam, with two towering men and fearless guys, one of the first demonstration under the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was then. And the Muslims, with Hamza leading one group of Muslims and Omar leading a second, they marched to the Kaaba. And so this had to just freak out the pagans at that point. I mean, we've been beating these guys up just on sight, but now look at these two dudes standing up front. So maybe we'll just leave them alone. But it took that organized resistance for the Muslims even to be in those early days before the Hijrah, that it took that organized resistance to even be able to come into the Kaaba. So I think our deen, our faith, promotes organization. The Jami, the Jamaat is all about what we can do collectively. Whatever I've been involved with, I have had enough sense and conviction to know you go out there by yourself, you do things just willy-nilly by yourself and not an organized effort, the worst outcome can befall you. Yeah. And we're living in a time now where ICE agents are masking up and beating up people and slamming senators and congressmen and arresting judges and all the mayors of cities. And so it's only to scare us. It's an attempt to put fear in the hearts of the American people who oppose what's going on. So it was so heartening. It made me feel so good to see so many millions of Americans standing up saying no kings. I mean, you can perceive what your potential as president is and what you want to do, but this ain't where you think it is. And to see just regular American citizens putting themselves out there like that, as Muslims, we should be oftentimes in the forefront of these movements. But by the same token, it's, as you said, we have to have allies. We need allies. And as we present social justice reforms and things that need to be done, it's essential that we align ourselves with those other groups, whether they're Muslim or not Muslim, to align ourselves so we can, it increases the megaphone of our voices when we come together with others.
Thank you very much, Imam Khalid. The key, one of the last keys here that I heard you say is the importance of organizing and being part of a group. And that's what this nonprofit, Muslim nonprofit show is about. That if you feel passionate about something, you see an issue or a topic or an idea that bothers you and you're dreaming of the world being a better place, there's somebody out there already organizing to solve that problem.
Yep.
And Imam Khalid's lived experience is, and also points to the Sunnah as we hear the story, is join that group, stand with them, follow their leadership, and don't be alone. And you are not alone unless you choose to be alone.
That's
Imam
right.
Khalid, Jazakumullah khairan. Thank you so much for being on the show today. Thank you for sharing.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you for all your years of service. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give your father Jannah, your family Jannah. And we can't wait to have you again on the show to hear more stories. Thank you so much.
Jazakallah. Thank you so much.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.